again. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Aura's virtual town hall meetings. It's Friday. I hope everybody is having a great day and had a great weekend. We are yet again in another week staying home in pandemic times. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and observing, what you can to stay connected with your loved ones and with your family. I started these live streams to bring information for us to foster a dialogue and to get to know people that we usually don't get to talk to. A lot of my audience has questions about politics, and what we want is to get more educated and learn more about current issues and the people that are trying to lead us forward. So today I am very excited to be introducing Kipp Mueller. He is running for Senate. And for those of you that are just joining in on the chat, don't forget to post your questions and share around what you think about our conversation. The conversation is always so much better with more people. So if you feel like some of your friends on your networks need to hear this conversation, please share it with them. And I will be answering questions as they come in. But Kipp, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Happy Friday.
Yeah, no complaints over here. Yeah. It's good to see you.
Beautiful. So, not a lot of people know. I mean, we heard about the Senate and, at the federal level. A lot of people don't even know that we have senators at the state level. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what a senator does, like in California, how powerful they are, who they are?
So I actually got to meet Senator Kamala Harris, and I made that joke in front of her because I do get asked sometimes. People are like, wait, are you running against Senator Kamala Harris? And I'm like, no way. And I actually told her that, and it was like one of the cooler moments in my life. No, I'm running for state Senate. These are immensely consequential seats that Democrats really need to pay attention to. Here we are in California. We're the fifth largest economy in the world. We have 40 state senators. These districts are larger than congressional districts. You represent nearly 1 million people as a state senator. Yeah. And you're dealing with multi-billion dollar, hundreds of billions of dollars budget, really making huge consequential decisions. And at the state level, we do so much more. If you think about issues like if you care about education, that's a state issue, and funding that comes from the state is enormously consequential on that front. And really all the issues we care a lot about, environmental issues, making sure we help workers out, that we do work on social justice, racial justice, et cetera, you can be extremely effective at the state level. Whereas, in Congress, tough to get things done. The state level, you can get a heck of a lot done. And you can really help out your constituents in a major way. So it's a really exciting thing to run for. And we as Democrats really need to pay close attention to state races and do more of it, state and local, both. And I think we're starting to do more of that now, but just maybe I'm preaching to the choir, because if you're watching a live feed of a state Senate candidate, you probably know this is true. But
well, what's interesting is that now a lot of people are paying more attention to state level legislation and leadership because of the rollout for the aid around COVID-19, where we see that our governor really had to step up, our mayor had to step up. Everybody is just kind of trying their best to respond to this crisis in the best way possible. So I guess, 1 million people is a lot of people. See, it's a country in some places. It's in fact bigger than some countries. And in terms of the aid around COVID-19, what has been the response that you see from the Senate? I know that they have not been able to meet. I, in fact, understand that recently they were able to travel to Sacramento back again. For those of you, they've been in Sacramento, so they haven't been able to fly and meet. So there has not been a lot of legislation around that. But what is your sense in terms of the response that the Senate as a body and senators have been doing in terms of COVID-19 response?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the Senate, the legislature in general, I would say is really doing what they can under the circumstances. I've largely been happy with state leadership when it comes to COVID-19, especially considering that this is the first time we've really dealt with a major pandemic, and we're learning a lot of lessons as we go. But I think that people have really stepped up, and it's just when you have this is yet another reason state elections are so important is when you have virtually a leadership vacuum at the federal level. You see what's happening right now, where our governors are stepping up and showing leadership and exemplifying what it means to be a leader and to lead us through. And it's not just a symbolic effort; it has real consequence that saves lives. So I think that the governor, I think the state Senate, state assembly, people have been as proactive as they can at making sure there's resources available. And the other thing that I also wanted to do now, just quickly, is make sure the second half of that battle is educating people on the resources available, which is also difficult to do. And so what I would say to everybody, if you're looking for childcare, if you're looking for unemployment insurance, if you're looking for hotel rooms, you're a healthcare worker and you don't want to stay at home, if you have a small business and you're looking for loans and assistance, go to covid19.ca.gov. I tell everybody that it's like this central location that just has the full panoply of resources available. It's really well done. And again, that's kudos to the state. The state has really stepped up in a profound way, and I'm proud of our state. And that's a broader theme of my campaign, that California has work to do, no doubt about it. And we have our issues, but I'm really proud to be in this state where we prioritize things like saving lives and making sure that people can get by when a pandemic comes around.
Yeah, so. I'm post-pandemic. So one of the things that I was speaking with yesterday at another panel was the response at the federal level and how the stimulus package has come and how it has really fallen short for working class people. Yeah. Where there are people that have not received the stimulus package, where there have people that have one of my neighbors, he applied for unemployment insurance for unemployment, and it's been a month and he has not heard anything from unemployment or received a check or anything of any sort. So yeah. It's so important in the roles that our leadership play, not to only figure out how we respond to this current situation, but what is the vision out of this situation and how we can best serve the people that make our city and our state amazing, and I just don't feel that for a lot of us that work hard and maybe live in the gig economy, or our artists or our mothers or our gardeners had really seen support. We still don't have a rent freeze. We still don't have a mortgage freeze.
Yeah.
Or cancellation, not even freeze or cancellation. So do you support these type of policies at the local level that should be also trickling down to the national level?
Yeah, I do. And I'm really worried about making sure that people can get by. More broadly speaking, it's just we have a growing, expanding gig economy, and folks who live and pay, they worry about the first of the month and they just get by driving Lyft or something like that. How are they going to save enough for retirement? How do they save enough to survive 3 months when a pandemic comes around? We're not answering those questions. And I think that that's really unfortunate. I think let me step back from that a bit. I think there are people who are trying, of course, to answer those questions and solve those problems. One of the things that we've seen recently that sort of came out of our federal government and the state level as well is finally expanding unemployment to independent contractors and small business owners as well, which I thought was critical. You're right. It's not getting to people at the rate that it should. We at the state level here also have a problem. I mean, the unemployment, the EDD just wasn't prepared. How could they? I mean, it's difficult to be prepared for something like millions and millions of applications coming in at once. But again, these are the lessons learned that we have to carry with us. Part of what your question, I mean, the broader answer to the question that you're asking is one we have to grapple with, which is, what does a working class look like in the 21st century? How does it get by? Like, if gig economies are predominantly what people do, and right now we're all ordering Postmates, trying to support folks who are living that life. And the question is, how does somebody who delivers Postmates for, let's say somebody did it for 30 years, how do they retire with dignity and knowing that they're going to be all right? And those are questions we have to grapple with and answer. And we need to start doing it now, because we're still early in terms of in terms of the expansion of the gig economy. I believe it's going to predominantly be what employs a lot of people, and it's going to continue to grow. How do we build it out so that it's a way to make a living and save for retirement? And that's a question we have to deal with.
I worry that with the way that we have responded to the pandemic and the lack of protections to people that don't really have a great safety net, the trillions of dollars that went to Wall Street and didn't go to protect people that are really always taking the smallest, stick. I worry that in the future, we're going to see more people living in the streets. I worry that people are not going to have enough to retire. I worry that we're moving to a much more work remotely world, which is great, and it can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other things. But how is that going to benefit us that now have to invest on working from home, on having a printer, on using electricity, on paying for a faster internet service, for all these other things. So I worry that there are no real protections for us moving forward.
Yeah.
And you as a senator, as a future senator, when you get elected, what are some of the things that you're planning in your vision to make sure that there are some benefits for us?
It's a great question. So one just kind of, this doesn't wholly solve the issue that you're pointing out. And I don't know that any given proposal would, but recognizing, for example, that working from home, or I'm really concerned, there's people who drive Uber, drive Lyft, who break down their cars just to barely be able to pay the bills. In effect, what you're doing is you're giving up. So for example, if I buy a printer and I'm working for a company and I buy it so I can work from home, or all of this should be tax deductible. And we should recognize that if somebody's driving Uber or Lyft, that's almost like the value of your car and its dilapidation should be considered in terms of where how much you're giving to that company in exchange for your wage. And so too often we find we live in a society where you're basically subsidizing the company with your car, breaking down the car. But what choice do you have? You need to pay your bills for the month, and so that's what you choose to do. It says I'm not live anymore on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm about to bring you in, but go ahead.
Okay, just keep going. Okay. More broadly speaking, it's a great question. And I think that the story of our lives, so I'm 34 years old, and I think the story of my life has been, in terms of our society, just the continued wage gap increase. Wages have remained virtually stagnant when accounting for inflation, while costs of living around us have gone up. And we don't have excuses here in California. We've had our costs of living go up dramatically. Do I add into Instagram here? Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. And part of it's been, it's been both sides of the aisle in California over the past 30 years as well. And so we need to both deal with the costs of living that exist in our world, and find ways to increase wages for folks across the board. That requires, that's deconstruction and reconstruction of a lot of laws that we currently have. But it's fundamentally making sure that that Sacramento is prioritizing the interests of the people over special interests, large corporations. And I think for too long, special interests have had their way, and we can change that. And that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. I'm getting a lot of questions on the chat that I want to bring in. But before I go on to answer folks' questions, I just want to share that I'm here having a conversation with Kipp Mueller. He is running for a state Senate here in California for District 21. For those of you that don't know where District 21 is, let's ask Kipp. Tell us a little bit about your district, because I was fascinated to learn that it's a quite conservative district, and it's just it's just right here.
So I can tell you that.
Tell us a little bit about your district, who you are, who's your people.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. Yeah. The district as a whole, so we have a 8-point registered voter advantage for Democrats here. So this is a very purple, if not blue, district in terms of the people who live here. It happens to be represented by a Republican state senator for the moment. So it's the Santa Clarita Valley, Antelope Valley, Victor Valley. And it's a district that we've got a lot of small businesses, a lot of aerospace and defense industry. We've got, a whole host of different types of businesses here. Although one of the things I talk about quite a bit is making sure that the economy gets diversified. Unfortunately, this district has issues going on. It's so I was told in Sacramento by folks that we're known as the Forgotten District, State Senate District 21. Last in line when it comes to getting resources from Sacramento. And what's crazy is every time I bring that up to folks here, people are always like, yep, nobody ever second guesses when I tell them that. We have we have the worst air and water in LA County. We have the highest rates of asthma, COPD. We have basic infrastructure needs. We don't have a single 4-year university here. So students will do well in high school, take off to go to 4-year universities and not come back. In order to build a local economy and a diverse, strong local economy, you need the basics. You need things like higher education and plenty of it, hospitals and proper funding for hospitals, trauma centers, good water, good air. You need to attract people to live here by providing those things. And unfortunately, at the state Senate level, we just haven't had that. And we have the potential to bring a whole new economy here to build this district out the way it deserves to be. We have such a wonderful, rich culture and people here, and we deserve better. We deserve more.
Yeah. What do you love about your neighborhood?
My neighborhood?
Yeah.
So I love a lot about my neighborhood. So I lost my dog. Well, if you've seen on social media, it's happened a couple times.
Kipp has a dog that he absolutely loves. So yes,
I do. So he escaped here, and I'll tell you what was so wild. So let me actually take a step back. Growing up, I had a really strong sense of community and was like, friends were more like family and neighbors were friends. And that's what I grew up with. And in high school, I lost my best friend, another close friend. And the way that the community galvanized and came together, it just became so solidified as part of my identity that I need to have that. And throughout my life, I went to school in New York and the Bay and lived different places. You live in a big city, and ironically, sometimes you don't find that community. And I found that community here, and it's been such a beautiful experience. And it was really solidified by losing my dog. So lost my dog. And what was just so crazy was I met so many people who put in so much work and were out there late with me walking around, who I had just met. They never met my dog because the dog was lost. And I'll never forget, I was out about a mile away from my place, and I saw my neighbor. He's a retired sheriff, and he's just walking around. It's about 2 a.m. and he's just walking around the street in it's an industrial area. And I was like, what are you doing out here? Not saying his name. I was just like, what are you doing here? What's going on? And he was like, I wasn't sleeping that well, so I thought I'd just go out and look for your dog for a bit. Like,
that is great.
It makes me emotional to think about.
That's very sweet.
I was like, this is home. Yeah.
I grew up thousands of miles away from here, also in a small town in Colombia. And I also grew up with the same sense of community. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. My neighbors were like my parents. They, in fact, sometimes maybe a little too much. I mean, they really believed that they were like part of our, like, it was an incredible sense of community. And I ran for office. I ran for city council here in Los Angeles. And a big piece of me running for office was the fact that I had a home. My dad was always very empowering. And I don't think it was intentional. I don't think he was like grooming me to be anything, but he always gave me an opportunity to speak up in meetings. And, we used to go to town hall meetings, and we used to go to union meetings because he was the leader of his union. And he will always ask me to speak. And so that really empowered me, gave me a sense of voice. I know that you also grow up with your dad, and your dad was a painter.
Yeah.
So you grew up. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and who you are, in the sense of a lot of this stuff that you learn when you're a child really translate to the things that you do later in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you so my dad was a house painter. So I grew up painting houses, and I'd be up on different roofs in violation of various labor laws. But sometimes I'd be painting mansions, and other times apartment complexes where folks were struggling. And so I saw from a pretty early age what, income inequality looked like, and it was very much a part of my day to day. And it's, a mansion would have a guest house, and then we'd go to the gas station and see folks who were homeless. And my dad would talk to everybody. So everybody was like, like everywhere we go, it was like, Neil, what's up, man? So I knew everybody, and so I felt akin with everyone, even as a child, but knew that there was this income inequality, and that some people were struggling while others were, just balling out. And I was just like, this is just like, can we not have the kids be hungry? Like, can we not have like literally starving kids around, And so that really impacted me. Today, by the way, I'm a workers' rights attorney. I'm a pro bono asylum attorney. I have to rejoin the live video, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. Everybody who's not on Instagram, just be patient with me just for a second. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Perfect. I keep going. Don't stop, because
okay. All right. So
down in my home, so I might be calling you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, so, but I saw that income inequality, and I just thought that, that there should be a baseline, basic human dignity and human rights established in the United States. We don't have that. We have literally like people in the Antelope Valley, where I'm seeking to represent, have so much arsenic in their water, they're not able to drink it in some places. I mean, it's like,
that is ridiculous. I mean, that is unheard of. This is like our most fundamental common, like, human right.
Yes, exactly. And we're in the wealthiest country the world has ever known. By the way, you mentioned Jeff Bezos earlier. He's set to be a trillionaire at some point in his life, they're saying now. He's going to be the first trillionaire. And what's remarkable is you have this guy who says, he said he invests in space travel, and someone asked why, and he said, well, I just don't know what to do with all this money, so I invest in space travel. Why not?
Wow.
And either that month or the next month, there was a report that came out that warehouse fulfillment center workers were wearing diapers to work because they were so afraid to go to the bathroom and not meet their quotas and be fired. That's the same month. It's like the same guy who owns this company and makes that, he's going to be a trillionaire while his company has people wearing diapers to work. That's not the America we want to live in. That's not the way America is supposed to be. America is supposed to be a place where working families do well, get by, able to retire with dignity and take care of themselves. You work full time, you should be comfortable. That's all we're asking. Nobody's asking for that much.
We're not asking to get the whole 3 trillion.
Yeah,
and
not everybody has to
and it's so sad to see that some of the industries that got the most money are the fossil fuel industry, for example. I feel very passionate about protecting our environment.
Yes.
So it's just sad that now we have ramped up the production of plastic, which threatens our food supply greatly, because a lot of this plastic end up on our oceans. Not just that, the production of plastic in general generates more CO2 gas, greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore climate change. Yes. There's a lot of people out there saying, well, we're not driving our cars. We have the less pollution in generations. Yeah, that's all great. But how long this is going to last?
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. and to fight climate change, this is not something that we just do for 1 month and that's it. This is a life-changing, we have a life-changing opportunity as a country, as a society, globally.
Yes. And unfortunately, CO2 sits in our atmosphere a lot longer than a month, hundreds of years. So you don't get to take a month off and solve the climate crisis. Yeah, it is a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle. I want to bring another question that I'm getting from some folks on Facebook. and they're asking what's your plan to help the exodus of businesses from leaving the state. Even before the pandemic, I mean, we paid some of the highest taxes in the country.
Yeah.
And especially in conservative areas, this is a rhetoric that they really use to attack, the fact that we invest on protecting our environment, and we protect workers, we protect immigrants.
Yeah.
We want families to stay together. So what's your plan to make sure that now more than ever in the pandemic, we just end up with a few people and everybody just leaves to Vegas?
Yeah. So, so I grew up with a small business family. Like I said, my dad was a house painter. He owned a business and hired a couple folks to work with us. And so I know what it's like. And small businesses are absolutely critical to our economy. I think they employ close to 99% of employees around California. It's something very, very high, some percentage. I don't want to quote it, but it's high. And so making sure small businesses are comfortable is really important. And I started and sold a small business myself. It was an online education company in California. And, things like the franchise tax early on when I was starting this business, $800. It was tough for us. We're just barely, trying to ramp up. And there was a lot of upfront cost involved in that particular business. So it's hard. And I think I'd like the idea of exploring actually dealing with the franchise tax and making it friendlier. I think investing more in there's small business programs that the governor has that provide assistance to small businesses, providing legal services from the state to small businesses to help them deal with those costs as well. There's just a lot of upfront costs that goes into it. And as far as with COVID-19, luckily we have some loans becoming available. As you said earlier, we need way more money, way more.
Like I have a small business. I work with small businesses. I work with a lot of women that are small business owners, and it's really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
So I really feel for small businesses and for people that are trying to get their dream going. Get their idea, their independence, their sovereignty. So I hope that when you get out there and become a senator, you also, I feel like there is a big tension between sometimes the small businesses and labor, the same with labor and the environment. So I have been a big supporter of the Green New Deal. That shouldn't be a secret from anybody. If you guys think it's a secret, well, let me tell you, I support the Green New Deal. Yeah. And if you support the Green New Deal, please put it on the comments too, and put a little heart, or make sure that we know that you also how this is received, because especially now we have an incredible opportunity to transform our economy to a green economy that is sustainable and that also protects our planet and the people that live in our planet. And this tension is so ironic.
Yeah.
And I wish it wouldn't exist, because we all need to be working together.
Totally. But the other thing is to lay that. So I just want to dispel with the notion that these are totally in tension with one another. And Harold asked about exodus of small businesses. So, let me actually start by saying this, that in our district, what I want to see is a clean energy economy built out that employs people. And the clean energy economy is the future, whether we want to accept it or not. It's happening. And the world is competing. Right now, California is competing with the world. We're doing it on our own because unfortunately our country's not interested in doing so. But solar and wind are becoming cheaper than any other form of energy. It's becoming economically sound to transition, smarter. And the only thing that's keeping the fossil fuel industry especially strong is they are the most subsidized industry in the world. And if we were to remove that, and imagine if we flip those subsidies to green energy, it would be an instant transformation. But already, even with those subsidies, it's still cheaper to transition to green energy. So what I want to see is us build out that economy here locally. And I will mention, when you strengthen the economy and build out an economy, something like a clean energy economy, that lifts other businesses as well. And it helps small businesses around. There's more people walking around Palmdale or Santa Clarita, and they're buying cookies from your store because they work over down the street at this clean energy company. So part of protecting small businesses is just building on our economy, and especially here in this district, diversifying our economy, attracting companies to come here, that protects our businesses here and makes it more financially.
And especially in your area, well, in all California, where we are sitting in the brightest sunshine of all of, I think, in the country,
Yeah.
where we can really galvanize solar energy efficiency, battery storage. You know, it's not, we suffer from some of the most devastating fires. Your
Yep.
district does too.
Yeah.
Devastating fires that
Yep.
the bottom line is that it costs so much our economy every time this recovery, and all of these are environmental issues. We should be employing our labor partners and people that are part of trade and unions to build more microgrid technology where we can be energy independent, where we can utilize the energy that we galvanize from the sun and maybe sell it back to the utilities that provide us our services, so we can see more benefits that is for everyone and not just for certain people.
Yes. Yep, exactly. And building this clean energy economy should be a great thing for labor if we do it right. And what we have to do is work with the unions to make sure that how we're building it out and what we're doing keeps folks employed, keeps people comfortable, and we can do it that way. There's a wonderful balance to be struck here, where we transform our economy in California, and that's exactly what I intend to do. So
I totally agree. I'm having some other questions. People are asking if you're supporting. Let me see. I got so many comments. If you're supporting Medicare for all and student debt. I'm guessing.
Well, I don't support student debt.
I don't support student debt either.
As a person who has student debt, I'm not in support of my student debt. So Medicare for all. Yeah, so I think Medicare for all at the federal level is the way to go. I do support making sure everybody has access to quality, affordable care. The thing is, at the state level, what I want to see is an increase in funding, an further expansion of Medi-Cal. Fundamentally, everybody should have preventive care. It's the right thing to do. It's cheaper to do as well, but that shouldn't even be the primary reason. It's the right thing to do. Healthcare is a human right. The only issue is at the state level, whether Medi-Cal for all or something like a program like that would work. You have to make the budget work, and that gets into the details like payroll taxes and how much of that money is coming back to California. We'd have to get waivers from the federal government to get enough of that money to be able to fund a program like that. That gets complicated, and I want to make sure if we're going to do that, we do it right, because you don't want to not budget it not budget it properly, and then have somebody like Donald Trump point at it and be like, look, like Medicare for all programs don't work. We should never do it anywhere ever. Because we didn't put enough into it. And so you have to budget it properly. And I think the federal government has the means to handle the upfront costs and build it out that way. So at the federal level, it makes sense to me. Yeah.
Kipp, I just have to say this because I often feel that the things that are good for our communities, canceling student debt, Medicare for all, single payer, rent cancellation, mortgage cancellations, always take this toad of, well, we got to see what's in the budget. And then at the end of the day, there is plenty of money for other things. So I think our priorities need to shift and need to change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you can make it if you can make it solvent and work in California, I'm down with it. So what we could do is sit down and start talking about planning it. I want to see it happen, believe me. And in the federal, like I said, at the federal level, it should be done. At the state level, this is the way I'll put it, is I'm potentially for it if it's the right plan and it works. I mean, I agree completely, 1,000,000% with the intention behind it, because nobody should be lacking healthcare or fearful of walking into an emergency room because the bill is going to cause them to default.
This is crazy. And with COVID-19, I mean, it has really unveiled our dilapidated healthcare system.
Yeah.
Where we are quarantining, our economy is in pieces.
Yeah.
In pieces. Yeah. Like it's a shit show. Let me just say it. Let me just put it this way. We can get sick.
Yeah, we have a broken healthcare system, and it's a sick care system, and people are afraid to access it. And you can blame Trump for quite a bit when it comes to our response to COVID-19, but not for all of it. We also just have a broken healthcare system, and as long as it exists where somebody pulls up with their child to an emergency room and thinks twice before walking in because they know that bill could ruin them, we have a bad system in place, a morally lacking system.
I absolutely, I mean, there is so many ways, and this is why I think we just need new bold leadership. We need like almost radical leadership change, because the way that things have been going hasn't really been working for us, has it?
It does not work.
For a lot of us, it's working for some people.
Yeah.
And some folks are asking about public banks, which I'm in full 300% support. And in the state of California, we voted, the voters decided that we're going to have a public bank. Do you support public banking?
So now I think it's cities and counties can open public banks, and that's now allowed. Yeah, I think that's great. I want to see actually a state level green bank that offers either low or zero interest loans to green economy companies, small businesses, for example, and even work in possible forgiveness depending on what kind of businesses are being built and how much they push us in the right direction when it comes to developing clean technology.
And I actually bank with Aspiration, and they are a small bank, and they're very pro the environment. I actually had Joe, one of the founders of the bank, coming to speak to us. But you guys can go watch that on my YouTube channel or on Facebook, somewhere else. But we already had this conversation, and I appreciate you're talking about this, because banking and the money in politics is super important, especially in how all of these regulations, rules, laws get played out at the end of the day, and how the pharmaceutical industry, the healthcare industry, the fossil fuel industry, the military, the complex, the privatization of jails, which is something that I want to ask you, because you have been an attorney working in that space, often get more benefits. Their lobby are really strong. And again, it leaves working class people really behind. So in terms of in terms of mass incarceration, the pipeline from schools to prisons, this idea of targeting people of color because of how they look and because of just who they are, this institutionalized racism that we see in law enforcement. What are you planning to do to address that at the state level?
Yeah, that's specifically the school to prison pipeline is what you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, in general, because this is not something, you don't end up in prison just because you woke up one day and you're there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Historically, you can see sometimes if you have a kid that has been truant at an early age, you can almost predict that in our communities and communities of color and Black communities and African and Black communities and Latino communities, immigrant communities.
Yeah,
the pool is oftentimes more of us, and it's so easy to say, well, because you're breaking the law, because you're not following the rules. But the reality that there is also an institutionalized racism that is embedded in all in stereotyping, and who do they stop? Why do they stop them? I mean, last year I shared a news from the police force in New York, where they basically investigated and found out that they were actually asked to stop all the people of color.
Yeah.
It didn't matter why.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, the school to prison, like, so many things come to mind for me in terms of how to deal with the school to prison pipeline, from like its resources from beginning to end of that story of a given child's life, right? Where that child was born and the zip code may have affected the quality of the schools that are around and what kind of resources are available, and whether so for example, like, I think that we should look into universal pre-K and making sure that from a very early age, right now in California and around the country, it's like ages 0 to 5 is basically like Lord of the Flies to all families. It's kind of like, good luck, everybody. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the most developmental moments in a child's life. So when you're born and raised in a family that has a lot of resources available, that's going to be some great development that you're going to have at your disposal from ages 0 to 5. And so dealing with something like, and then of course on the back end is if you're talking about kids in high school that end up going to juvenile detention or the prison system, you're right. It's making sure that we're our law enforcement isn't targeting. It's also making sure that we have a rehabilitative system in place that prioritizes rehabilitation. And one of the things I talk about quite a bit with criminal justice reform, there's a couple ideas that I have in mind I want to see. One is having counties incentivize recidivism rate reduction as part of a prosecutor's performance evaluation. So if a prosecutor has better recidivism rates, they have better chance at promotion, and it incentivizes the prosecutor. Which I worked in the DA's office in Santa Clara and saw firsthand. As one example, I'll just give you kind of an example of the discretion that's available and the incentives that are there. I was walking by this prosecutor's office at 6 p.m. one night, and she was like, "Hey, Kipp, by the way, do you want to do a hearing tomorrow morning? It's a Romero hearing. I want to ask for 7 years for prison for this guy." And I get a hold of the police reports and stuff and his past record. He's transient. He's addicted to methamphetamines, and sort of he'll steal cars once in a while and go like park the car, use methamphetamines, get arrested. Okay, so she wants 7 years, and I saw that, and I looked at the recommended, and I was like, I think this is like, I could ask, I think maybe 2 years, and then different forms of rehabilitation that were offered by that district attorney's office. She was like, whatever, sure, if you want to do that, just go ahead and do that. And so I went the next day.
This is someone's life.
Exactly.
Okay? And addiction is a disease.
Totally.
And why are we sending addicts to the prison system and not to rehab is beyond me.
Yes. And addiction to drugs. Exactly. But so on the one hand, like he stole somebody's car, and that's not good for that person. But on the other hand, if you want to solve the problem and you want to have less crime around you, you should look into rehabilitation because that is far more effective than incarceration and just retribution. This system of just punish them for what they've done. It doesn't lead to good results, which is why we have some of the highest recidivism rates in the entire country. In the United States has the highest. We incarcerate a higher per capita amount of people in our country than anywhere in the world by far.
Absolutely. But also because we have private prisons that are making money out of putting people in jail. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
so
we could talk about this for quite a while.
For days. And I see some of the comments, guys. And if you are watching on Instagram and on any of my social media, I'm talking to Kipp Mueller. He's running for Senate in District 21. And we're just kind of having this conversation about who he is. And there's a lot of questions. If you are on Instagram, please go to the comment box, and right next to the comment box, there is a question mark symbol, and put your questions there so we don't lose them in the chat. I see some people on Facebook asking what are your views on cannabis? I like to call it cannabis, friends. Let's just get the terminology together.
Yeah.
It's cannabis. It's legalization and decriminalization of cannabis.
And if I understand, marijuana was the term used basically to stigmatize it and attach it
Absolutely.
to folks. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have legalized cannabis in California.
Yeah.
We're one of the states that legalized cannabis. What is your take on your views on, well, not legalization because it's legal, but decriminalizing cannabis?
No, I think it's critical, and I think we need to retroactively do it. I also think that we need to, for decades, we have arrested far disproportionately Black and brown people for possession and selling cannabis. Cannabis. And now all of a sudden it's legal, and a bunch of white people are capitalizing on that and selling it and making a bunch of money. We need to find ways not just to deal with the criminal records that were attached to folks, but also make sure that Black and brown people are a part of that process of building out the cannabis industry. I think that the cannabis industry and hemp is a great alternative environmentally. It's deep,
Absolutely.
and it should be definitely something that we invest in and
Explore.
explore. Absolutely. And as far as cannabis, I mean, otherwise think that the only other concern I have about it is the easy way to legalize it was basically all of the politicians saying, yeah, we'll make it legal, and then we'll just tax the hell out of it and regulate it a lot, and that'll make it, easy for us to support legalizing it. But the truth is, if you disincentivize folks to join the legal community and the legalization of it, they're going to continue to sell it on the black market. And as of now, there's not a lot of incentive in place for people in the black market to jump into. I had some comments are popping out. It's pretty funny. I don't know how it was like a big comment for me for a second. So there's not a lot of incentives in place for people to hop into the legal. We want to fully incentivize everybody to get into the legal market. Anytime you have cannabis being illegal, it means people are hiding from the law. It means guns. It means violence. It means
I got my Kipp. I got my ideas about cannabis. I was a big supporter of Prop 64. I helped it pass from an environmental standpoint. That was one of the reasons to mitigate all of the environmental reparations, basically, because of the illicit market.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can bring equality to cannabis. I think we need to bring equity because historically, Black people and Latinos have been targeted more, especially if they're caught smoking a joint on the street or something of that sort. The consequences are like deeper, stronger, harsher for us. So in LA, for example, in terms of cannabis, they have the equity provisions, which allows people of color or Black and brown folks to apply in a higher rate than white people to just kind of bring equity, to the conversation. And I really hope that when you get to the Senate, and somebody was asking this here, and I thought it was very timely, is racism is the root of all of these systems of inequality that are happening. And you are aspiring candidate for Senate. You are a white male. That's just how God brought you to us. This is just what it is. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And it's not bad or anything like that. But how do you plan to use your place of privilege? You're a male of privilege, yet again running for Senate to lead a piece that has been much forgotten in our state. And especially how do you center your male privilege to bring about the voices of African Americans and Latinos and Asian Americans and indigenous people in our area that also need a place on the table?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question. I mean, so there's a lot of fronts where I want to do exactly that. I mean, one is just passing legislation that effectuates equity, and that's making sure that we have equity across the board, not just from, like we said, the cannabis industry to other industries. And I agree with equity. I agree with that notion. Mm-hmm. We can't, there's this mentality from some, like Supreme Court John Roberts, who said the only way to stop discriminating on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. And his idea is if we just like made all facially neutral laws today, then everything would just work itself out. And unfortunately, that's just not the way it works. Because, over the past hundreds of years, white families have amassed, on average, not all white families, but on average, a lot more wealth, and wealth begets wealth. Mm-hmm. And so we have these disparities, and we have to deal with that and proactively do so. Not just say, we're not racist anymore, so it's all going to be okay now. That's not how it works. And so making sure that opportunities available to all is important, and dealing with it from that standpoint of equity. I think that another informal thing is just making sure that it's not just my team, but that in the future that I mentor women, people of color. And by the way, I started a political organization a few years ago, and we primarily supported women, people of color, LGBTQ plus community folks who are running for office, because I I completely agree.
Where were you when I was running for office, Kipp? I know you.
Yeah. Well, so my buddy Joe, I don't know if he's watching right now, but we could talk to him because he's running it now, and he's still, we still have some. It's a PAC, and it has some money still, and it supports young future leaders.
I'm young. I'm young.
Yeah, it's true. No, we'll talk. But that's the idea, and making sure that our I know it's sort of, there's always an irony when you're the white guy who's saying that you want to see better representation at the state and federal level, but whatever I can do from my position to lift women, people of color, make sure that our state legislature and other bodies do truly represent our populace. I want to be a part of that. So you clue me in and help me do it. Yeah.
And for some of you that are just joining in, welcome. I'm speaking with Kipp Mueller. He is a candidate for Senate for District 21. Is in the Santa Clarita area. For those of you that might not be familiar, we're asking him some very fun questions and very tough questions too. You have been an attorney defending immigrants that come seeking asylum. You know, California is a state border. We have seen some of the worst and most heartbreaking policies happening coming from the national level around immigration. Very, very little solutions to the fast and growing issue of immigration, and also this terrible policy to separate families when they come to the border. What have you seen in your position as a future senator, when you get elected? What are the things that you want to do in terms of supporting keeping families together?
That's a great question. So first off, we need to make sure that people recognize these are refugees that we're talking about that come to our border seeking a better life. And this is the whole point. This is what the country is supposed to be about. It's right there in our Statue of Liberty. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And that's what we want, is for refugees to see America as a place to have a second chance and to build a new life. And unfortunately, there are folks who do not have that mentality. They do not view refugees for who they are. And I think that's really unfortunate. I actually represented a woman from Nicaragua who was separated from her children for about 7 months. They were sent. It took me and 2 other attorneys about 3 weeks to find her kids in the system. They were put on a plane by themselves. I think there was some chaperone on the plane itself, but sent to New York and put into a foster care system there, which is just insane.
It boils my blood. It's just terrible.
And of course, for my client, it was insufferable. I mean, she just she could not function. And so getting her to she has to present her case in court, and she's just emotionally wrecked by what happened. And she's a very strong woman. She's a civil engineer, but that would break down any human being. And so we did reunite them. I've got the video of it. It's one of the it was at LAX, and one of the most impactful days of my life for sure. And what I want to see is obviously a change in mentality, but also at the state level. One thing I've spoken with folks about is the idea, and I've spoken with the Senate President Pro Tem about it as well, is a right to counsel for asylum seekers in California. So you walk into a federal immigration court today, and you have your client, and there's about 10 people sitting behind you. They don't have attorneys. They don't know what's going on. Some of them think they're just being processed and they're going to live here now. And what they don't know is many of them are facing what amounts to a death penalty case for them. And they're facing a death penalty case in what amounts to traffic court, because there's no rules in immigration courts really. And so not having an attorney to guide you through that process is an absolute travesty. And that is not due process. These are federal courts. Every federal court should have the problem is these are treated technically as civil cases, but the consequences are so much more severe. And the reason that the right to counsel was given in criminal cases is because of the consequences. Well, what about the consequences where you're facing the death penalty? And the due process? Yeah, and the due process clause is not just for citizens; it's for persons.
And and some people in the comments have said not to say that you come here and you don't maybe speak English, you don't know anybody, you don't have any money, you've been traveling for weeks.
Yep, exactly. And
it's so humane.
Yep. I had a client from Cameroon who he flew to Ecuador, made his way basically on foot the entire way to the United States. He was jumped like 4 or 5 times, had no possessions left, was beat up multiple times by people on his way. I mean, and endured just the craziest circumstances, both where he lived at home and on his trek to the United States. And to not view that 18-year-old child who made that trek on his own across the world as a refugee and give him the time of day and his due process in court is shameful. It's absolutely shameful. It's not what this country is.
And also to see right now, for example, in the pandemic, that they are essential to our well-being, that they're the ones that are, harvesting our food. They're the ones that are doing all the work that other people don't want to do.
Yeah.
It really is. It's been really hard for me to see, the response, just in general, the sentiment with Republicans around immigrants, and especially now with Trump in office. We need to do everything in our power, anything possible, to make sure that Trump doesn't get reelected. So get around whatever ideas you need to all get around, friends. Yeah. I was a big Bernie Sanders supporter, and I get it. But right now, we just need to make sure that moving forward, we have a different leadership, unless you want to continue with the madness that we've been, going through right now. Talk to us about your competition.
Yeah, and let me just mention, I can do that. Let me just mention, by the way, that Republicans were not always this way. In fact, you can just go back to Reagan or George Herbert Walker Bush or even George W. Bush and hear a lot more compassion towards, not complete the way that we would hope compassion towards refugees, but much more than what you're seeing today. And so I don't even point to the Republican Party itself. I point to Trumpism when I think of true anti-immigrant sentiment.
There's a little posse there that is just pretty terrible. And just to be completely honest, Obama was, under his administration, was the most deportations in recent history. So there's no saints here, or the reality is that we don't treat immigrants with the respect that they deserve, or humanely, and that's just the bottom line. But in terms of your competition, tell us about who is running against you.
Well, I'm running this is the final big red seat in LA County. So for those of you who are not in this district, just so you know, this is a big red seat that we still have in LA County. I'm running against Scott Wilk. He's the state senator here, Republican. He's supported big oil in their endeavors. He's supported various special interests and has really prioritized their interests over the interests of the district. And as I mentioned earlier in this chat, we have a district with really desperate needs for the basics, like clean water and air. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned earlier, we're known as the Forgotten District. We have those problems. Those problems are not being solved. So this is an immediate need for change. My intention is to win this election and immediately get the Senate President Pro Tem's interest and support, as well as the state Senate and the state legislature more broadly, and focus their attention on what's going on in our district, bring some real investment back here and change lives for the better.
Awesome. Well, we're on the top of the hour, and I want to thank you so much for coming on board and educating us. Let us get to know you better and learn so much about just what is happening at the state level and your district. Anything else that you would like to share with us before we go?
I just appreciate all of your time. This is look at you all. This is like, we're 6 months out. You're watching this guy who's running for state Senate. This is so cool. I really appreciate that. And that's exactly the mentality we need to have. We need to be wholly invested in all of our elections, pay close attention. And it's time to start getting fired up now. We're less than 6 months out. It's time to really find that fire in your belly, find a way to get involved. It can be supporting me, but it doesn't have to be. Find something to get behind and let's get going. No regrets. We're going to give it all we've got this year.
If people really resonated with your message, how do they find you? If they want to donate or volunteer? Hey guys, we have a red state here happening.
Yes.
And with this pandemic, things are going to change a lot. So I'm assuming you're doing a lot of texting and a lot of calling so people can take action from their homes. So how can they support you, get elected?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Kipp for KIPP, there's two P's, FORSenate.com. If you can go there and you can click join now and just let us know what you want to do. You can make calls, text, whatever works for you. Or if you want to make the drive up here, that would be great as well in the fall, depending on what we're up to, if we're out there in person or not, we'll see. But you can go to kippforsenate.com. And then, of course, if you have the means and you're in a position to donate, that's great too. But any and all support is appreciated. And then if you can just get the word out, let people know this is the big red seat sitting in LA County. Yes, and we have tremendous potential in this area to really help folks build businesses out here, clean up our air and water. There's so much potential here right now. We have a lot of oil, a lot of drilling. We're not meeting our potential, but we have the potential to do that. So incredible.
Thank you so much, Kipp, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you come back when you become a senator.
I'm going to come back before that. We'll make this will be a thing. Yeah. This is great. I really enjoyed this.
Topics that people there was a lot of comments on Facebook. I saw lots of people.
We didn't cover all the comments, did we?
We did it. Sorry, everybody. We'll come back to them. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you very soon.
That sounds good. Thanks for having me. This was great. Really enjoyed it. All right.
So that was Kipp Mueller. And thank you all of you for watching my live stream. This is Aura's VTH, Virtual Town Halls, coming to you on Friday. We had today Kipp Mueller. He is a candidate for Senate in District 21, which is the Santa Clarita area in LA County. One of the last red, Republican counties, areas in our county. If you enjoy what you watch, please leave a comment, share it with a friend. You can also go to Aura 2020 / get involved and drop your digits so that we can keep in touch. We need to organize, we need to get educated, and we need to vote. So wherever it is, whether you resonate with my message or not, please, no excuses. This November, we must vote, especially now that everybody is going to get their mail ballot. Please make sure that you vote, and please use your voice and your vote wisely. Thank you guys so much. You have a wonderful, wonderful Friday, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.